welcome back to Freddy in the Shed, first review 2024. And yeah, we've got a new radio in the shack. This is a Retevis RA79. Now, a lot of you that know your radios, you'll all be shouting at the screen and saying, hang on a minute, Fred, that's not a Retevis radio. That's a Quansheng UV-K5. And it is a UV-K5. This is the Retevis version of that very, very popular Quansheng radio. A radio that just exploded, I think, just under a year ago now. And proved very, very popular. It's become the sort of UV-5R of the 2020s. This was the UV-5R. This, probably about 10 or 15 years ago, kicked off a revolution because you could reprogram this 2 meter 70 centimeter transceiver. You could reprogram it to do PMR, and this radio is even more moddable. You can program this radio quite drastically. Now, I've held off of getting one of these in the shack because they're not expensive, and I've held off mostly because when this radio first came out as a Quansheng, I saw some incredible claims that the radio could be wide-banded and used as a CB radio transceiver, was one of the claims. And it just isn't going to work, guys. This is primarily a 2 meter 70 centimeter UHF ultra-high frequency radio. It can be reprogrammed, and it's something that I'll do in the future. I will, when I've done this review, I will go into this and we'll try a couple of the programs out. It can be reprogrammed to receive on the 27 megahertz 11 meter band. In fact, it is a wideband receiver. It can be broken with software, and it can be reprogrammed to receive, I think, from anything from certainly 50 megahertz up to 600 megahertz. But as far as a transceiver goes, as far as a cheap CB walkie-talkie, it just isn't going to work. I could tell that straight away. It's so far out of the parameters what this radio was made for, that even if you do manage to get it to transmit, the power will be extremely low because the SWR on the radio is going to be crazy. And also, there will be a lot of spurious RF frequencies being transmitted by the radio, because the further that you push these radios away from their allotted boundaries where they were designed to work, the less screening and the more spurious RF transmissions it will reproduce. I mean, they do suffer from harmonics. Anyway, I'm not going to get too much into harmonics, but basically, whatever the frequency that you transmit on, double that frequency and you'll see another spike. So you get a single spike there, you'll see another spike, double it again, you'll get another spike. And that's radio harmonics. All radios do that. Quality radios generally have been precisionally screened so that they do not create any harmonics on the frequency you're using. This radio, yeah, we can have a look at that. It probably is going to have quite a few harmonics, but if you mod it and you take it into the CB band, 11 meters, 27 megs, you're going to suffer some serious harmonics. So I would say to people that are looking at these radios, straight off the bat, they might be able to receive on CB with a decent CB antenna. We might look at that later on, but please don't buy this radio thinking you're going to get a 30 quid CB radio walkie-talkie. And if you do, please do not program it and try and do that, because it's just a little bit too dangerous with RF signals. Having said all that, I am going to reprogram this radio because I think these radios work pretty well on the 446 megahertz band, which is the PMR radios. As a 2 meter 70 centimeter radio, it will transmit on, say, 430 up to 440 megs, and we're just going to push it that a little bit further up to 446. That shouldn't really be too much of a problem. You probably lose a slight bit of power. As I mentioned, this is the Retevis version of the Quansheng. This is the RA79. It does cost a few quid more than the Quansheng version. What the problem you're going to have now, like the UV-5R, is because this radio has become so popular, it's going to be cloned upon cloned upon cloned, and each time it's cloned, the price will drop, and it will get ridiculously cheap, believe me, but the quality will be reduced as well as they try and compete on price like they do in China. As with all Retevis products, you get a 30-day money-back, no quibble guarantee if you're not happy with the radio. Of course, if you go inside this and you mod it, you reprogram it like we're going to do with such as CHIRP or some of the other more exotic firmware programs you can use, I imagine you're going to invalidate the full 1-year warranty. A nice box it comes with. It comes with also instructions. Again, these are the sort of things that will be missed out as this radio becomes cloned. You do get a very nice instruction book. I'm a little bit funny about things like this. I do like to have an instruction book. It takes you all the way through the menu system. It's quite vast, the menu system. There's 51 standard menu options, and there's also what people call a hidden menu, and I just say it's a second menu, which I'll show you how to get into that in a moment, because we'll need to get into that to unlock the radio, because out of the box this radio won't transmit on the PMR frequencies. So yeah, it's a nice instruction book. I'm not sure if you get that with the Quansheng version. Also comes with a charging base, which is nice. You get a decent belt clip, a very sturdy, decent belt clip. I imagine that's the same on all the radios. You get a wrist lanyard, and yeah, that's really about it. Looking at the radio itself, the radio in the hand, it's nice quality actually, especially for this price point. The plastics, pretty tough. There's no give, there's no flexing. All of the buttons on the keypad, the function buttons, and it has got quite a lot of buttons, I will say it for that. PTT, rubberized, feels quite tactile. The two programmable function buttons there. On off, simple on off.
Welcome, channel mode.
And volume control, the obligatory light that you get, torch light you get in batteries. This side of the radio, you've got your COM ports. It's nice to see that you've got the standard 2 mini pin here, which I call a Kenwood jack. This means that all of your speaker mics you might have from your Baofangs, things like that, your charging cable, if you've already got the Retevis charging cable, that will work, and I'm pretty sure a standard Baofeng cable will work with a prolific driver. So yeah, it's good that they've kept that. I'm pleased about that. And then below that we have just got a USB-C there, which I would imagine is probably only for charging the radio off the stand. I don't think that's for programming the firmware. I don't know. I'll find out in a later video when I have a go myself. Moving around to the back of the radio, as I've already mentioned, we have got a very substantial belt clip that is metal inside there. I don't know if you can see that. And then we've got the battery. It's decent size, 1400 mAh, pretty standard. It should last for many hours on standby. I can just take that out, which I should be able to. There you go. Yeah, so that's the thickness of the battery. With the battery, the radio comes in at 220 grams, so it's quite light. And now what I like about this Retevis version, and I'm pretty sure that before it gets cloned, the Quansheng there, it'll have the same thing. You've got a rigid metal alloy chassis there, and that just gives you that little bit more confidence that if you do drop the radio, nothing inside is going to get broken. So let's just talk about the specs of this radio, because this is where this radio is so amazing, that it can be reprogrammed for some quite exotic frequencies. But generally, out of the box, it's a standard 2 metre and 70 centimetre radio. There are 2 versions available on the Retevis site. There's the Euro version. That transmits out of the box at 430 to 440 on the UHF, and 144 to 146 on the VHF. Pretty standard. There's also the American version. It's slightly more wide-banded. I think that goes 420 to 450 on the UHF, and 144 to 148 on the VHF. Also has the weather band, the NOAA North American weather band, which we can't get in the UK. 3 power settings on those frequencies. Low power is 1 watt, medium power 2.5, and then full power supposedly 5 watts. When using on PMR, this radio has privacy codes. You've got CTCSS and DCS privacy codes that you can set if you want to make your communication between 2 radios a little bit more private. Radio also has a function which you're seeing more and more on PMR radios, and that is a scan function and lock. The idea being there, if you say you're in a group and people are using certain privacy codes, DCS codes, hold down the scan on your radio, it receives their signal, and then it tunes your radio into those same codes. I did try and test that with a PMR. It kind of like took a long time to work. It did eventually work, but I thought that did take quite a long time. Like all of these little 2m77 radios, they are dual band. Normally the second band we don't really use. So the first band, this one, I've tuned this already in the 16 channels for PMR, but the second one we can use it because this radio will tune to the AM aircraft band, around 120 megs. So that makes it quite useful for scanning around, listening to aircraft. It does have a scan feature. I did try it. But again, I find the scanning on this radio really, really slow. So it's easier in a way just to break the squelch. And that's easy to do because it's a single press on this function button. And that... you don't have to hold it in like on some of the other radios. That breaks the squelch, and then you can just scan up and down the aircraft band to receive airplanes. How cool is that? Just have a quick look at the buttons, and like I say, there's 51 menu options, which, because we're using this as a PMR radio, we don't need to go into those. But to get into the standard menu, it's very easy. You just press the menu button there, and as you can see, the first ones that you're going to use, there's the squelch setting there, the step rate, which you only need to adjust once, but if you're going to reprogram it in CHIRP, it'll do that for you. And then there's your transmit power, low, medium and high. And then there's your privacy codes, which I've switched off, so this is completely wide. It'll pick up everything. And then it goes on, and then you've got your standard things. I mean, you've got things like offset, which again, we're not going to be worried about that because we're not using it as a ham radio. You can set the receive to wide and narrow, which is quite useful. And you can rename all your memory channels, and it has a Vox voice activated feature, which they've all got, and it's got a timeout function, and there's loads and loads of stuff in there which we're not really going to use. So you've got your standard keyboard at the bottom, which is good because it means that you don't have to buy that additional programming cable if you've got the patience to sit there and program all of those PMR channels into memories yourself. It just takes a little time, but you can do it. One thing I find a little bit disappointing is on a Bofang UV-5R, for example, it's very easy to switch between the dual bands, and you've just got an A and B button there. I can't see that you've got the function on this 79. It seems that you have to press the F function button there, and then you have to press another button, A and B, and that changes between the 2 bands. The same thing if you want to go from memory to frequency road. Again, you have to press the F key, and then that button. It's just 2 presses. I just think they've got enough buttons on here. They could have just maybe made these hotkeys. You might be able to reprogram these in CHIRP. I haven't actually looked yet. The second function of the first button, if you hold this down,
Scanning begin.
the radio now goes into scan. Oh, he's picking up aircraft there. That's pretty cool. There you go. That picked up an aircraft, and that's inside the shack. The radio will go into scan mode. You can control the up and down of the frequency, or if you're in memory, the memory channels by this. So it's quite a nice little scanner. As I say, just as you heard, it just picked up a aircraft there inside the shack. Second button by default has the obligatory LED light, which they've all got. I believe it flashes. Yeah, there you go. I think, and I do think it has an alarm function. I think if you hold it in.
Points if you get it right.
Oh no, I've changed it.
This week's top 10 in 1988.
So it's that long.
Is a dance.
I've changed it. It did. If you hold it in, it did put a really annoying alarm on. So what I've done, I've changed mine. So this has got a built-in FM radio, and it's quite useful. The reception, obviously, isn't brilliant because it's using a UHF VHF antenna, but it picks up.
I have no idea, Gary.
very directional, but it's there. Quite useful for getting the news when you're out and about. As far as memory channels go, radio's quite generous actually. It's got 200 memory channels, so that means I can save all of these 16 PMR channels, and then at a later date I can tune in all of the aircraft frequency bands, and that'll make it easier when we do a scan. We'll do a scan in memory mode, and we're more likely to pick things up. As I mentioned, there are 51 standard menu options. Now when you first get this radio and you program in your PMR channels, when you try and transmit it, you'll see that it says disabled. So it's blocked because it's not legally able to transmit on those PMR channels. Now, thankfully, there's a very, very quick, easy hidden menu. Well, it's an extra menu, basically. All you have to do, switch the radio off. And it's a bit awkward to do this on camera, but you need to hold down the PTT and that first function button and then switch the radio back on. So let me try and do that if I can on camera. There we go. And now we've got a completely different set of menu options here. They call them hidden. And you've got all these different frequencies here that you can go through, and you can manually switch which frequencies you want to lock and which frequencies you want to open up. The menu I've used basically is this one that says F lock. This is frequency lock. If we go into this one, and these are all of the settings that the radio ships with. So at the moment it's set to Great Britain, which means it won't transmit on the PMR. And then you can change it down, and you can change it to all the different settings there. There's the American FCC. Or off, which is what I'm going to use. So we're just going to set that as off, which means now that the frequency lock is removed. And when we go back and we switch the radio on again,
Welcome, channel mode.
there you go. That's channel 16 on PMR, and now the radio is transmitting. So yeah, you're going to need to do that. When this radio arrives on your doorstep, obviously it won't have the 16 PMR channels programmed into it. There'll be a variety of test frequencies. Retevis are very good. They make sure that none of the test frequencies will interfere with anything in the country of origin they send it to. So you're going to have to reprogram it. You can use Retevis, have got programming software on their website which you can use. I have used it, it seems fine, but I just prefer to use CHIRP. I just find that CHIRP generally works every time. So that's my program of choice. It's a free program that you can search for on the internet and you can download. I'll try and remember to leave a link in the description. Now you will need the standard Kenwood type programming cable. Retevis sell that on the website, and you can buy it at the same time. It's about $19–20. I thought that was a bit expensive. It's well under half that price on Amazon if you go onto Amazon. And I did try one of my older cables, my Bofang cables, and it's a prolific cable, and that also works. Now when it comes down to programming with CHIRP, I would say over 90% of you watching this video, you know exactly what I'm talking about. You've got the lead, you've done it 100 times, I don't need to show you. But there are a few people that maybe have never done it before, and if you're not computer savvy, you might struggle a little bit getting the program installed on your computer and working out how it works basically. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a separate video, because this video is going to go over 20 minutes anyway and it's too long. So I'm going to do a separate video, a really slow step-by-step guide for people that aren't so computer technical minded, and I'll start that video as soon as I finish this one, and it should be up on the channel maybe a day or two later, and that will hopefully help you out. Anyway, going to get on to just the basic testing now. We're not going for mega range, but it'd be nice to see what this 5-watt radio does. You've seen it all before. I'll be using this Retevis RA79 as the receiving radio, and it's a nice day. We'll go out for a walk and we'll see how well it sounds when it gets back to the shack. So let's get on with that. So here we go. We've got a nice sunny day for a change. It's been really rainy in the UK. So just going to walk up to my regular testing area. As the crow flies, we're not that far from my QTH. It takes me about 15 minutes to walk here, so it's probably about 1 kilometre. But what I have done is I've deliberately put a lot of infrastructure between the two radios, lots of houses, cars. We're going to be over a dual carriageway, which makes it even harder for these radios to transmit. Hopefully the channel I've chosen, channel 12, will be clear. I keep getting comms every time I want to do a test. But like I say, it's not so much about distance. If you want to increase your distance, and certainly on the receive, of course you can just swap the antenna out. I did a few videos on some very cheap, I think it was Nagola N177 longer range antennas. They were like £3 or £4 from China, and they were a little bit hit or miss with the SWR. But certainly by putting a longer antenna on the radio, it improves the receive quite dramatically. But we're just using the standard antenna, and we're going to get up to our perch. I'll do at least 2 tests, one on high power, which is supposedly 5 watts, but we're not really sure what this puts out. I haven't got a testing meter, unfortunately. It works on this frequency, but it's probably less than 5 watts. And in the low power, it should be 1 watt, just a little bit above standard PMR power. So join me in a second when it's a bit busier and we get up on our perch. Oh, they're coming for me again. Every time I get here, I hear police sirens. Okay, I'm at my usual perch and we've got the radio. Going to use this as a high power test, so supposedly 5 watts, back to the QTH. So let's give it a go. Yeah, testing 1 2 1 2 audio test, high power. Yeah, testing 1 2 1 2 audio test, high power, supposedly 5 watts, back to the QTH. 1 2 or 1 2 audio test. Going to do the low power test, so about 1 watt coming in. That's the it's picking up aircraft. You won't hear that, but that's picking up aircraft on the second frequency. Right, here we go. 1 watt. Yeah, audio test. 1 2 1 2 3 4. 1 watt power now. Yeah, audio test. 1 2 1 2 3 4. 1 watt power now. 1 watt power. Audio 1 2. As it's quite a nice day, I'm going to take a walk up the side of the dual carriageway here and just test the range a little bit further, and we'll just see how it does. So this is pretty cool. We're just walking back down and we're picking up aircraft on 119.725 AM. Coming in surprisingly well, considering we're using the UHF antenna. I think it would probably work. I think it'd work even better with a long antenna. But that's quite impressive, really. Right, so I've walked out a bit further, another 10 minutes or so, to this rather nice field, or rugby pitch, I think is probably what it is. It's quite a nice day, so it's worth a walk. So we're going to give it another go, and you probably can't see that, but we're on high power on channel 12 on the PMR. We'll give it another go. This is probably the furthest I've ever walked from the QTH, so yeah, it's probably pushing my luck with a little PMR radio, but let's give it a try. Yeah, testing audio 1 2, furthest distance now, furthest distance. Yeah, testing audio 1 2, furthest distance now, furthest distance on channel 12 PMR audio test, 1 2 1 2 audio. I was very impressed with that receive test, the audio quality back to the QTH, really, really good. And that field was about the furthest that I've walked out. I reckon it's about 1.5 kilometres. It's not that far, but lots and lots of houses and infrastructure between the two radios, and the audio got back really nice and clear. I certainly could have walked out further. I think the range on this radio is no problem. Unfortunately, I've got no mates. I'm Nobby No Mates, so when I'm walking out with the radio at home, the camera's just whirling away, eating into the battery. I'm very aware of that, and it takes me about 50 minutes round trip, so that's about getting to the limit of my battery. So yeah, this radio, it's a good little radio, really. It's a great little toy, a great little gadget. I mean, these are all over the internet as the Quansheng, was it UV-K5, and the price is just going to drop and drop on the clone radios. Personally, as they're so cheap anyway, I think it's worth spending another 10 or £15 and buying a branded make like this Retevis, or maybe if you can get an original Quansheng. I just think it's better. Retevis, of course, give you a 30-day back, no quibble, money-back guarantee if you're not happy with the quality of the radio. A year's warranty, but I'm not sure how that gets on if you do flash the firmware and mod the radio. You probably invalidate that. Incidentally, when I was walking out there, I did mention a longer antenna. I did put a picture up on the screen, but this is what I was talking about. This is a fake Nagoya NA771, I think I called it a 177. The genuine version of these antennas are pretty good. If you can get hold of a genuine one, they're about 20 UK pounds. These fake ones are incredibly cheap. This was about £3 or so. I would say if you're going to go for a fake one, just at least order 2, because some of them, when I tested them, were a little bit high on the SWR. But as far as a receiving antenna, I put them on my UV-K5s here, and yeah, they work really, really well. Coming up will be that CHIRP video that I promised you for anyone that's struggling with programming one of these radios. I'll try and get that up maybe tomorrow. I'll start it straight after this video. Also, what impressed me was the aircraft receive on this radio when I was out on that flight. The aircraft was hammering in, just on a little VHF, UHF rubber ducky. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to follow that up, and I'm going to get an adapter, and I'm going to fit this longer telescopic whip antenna, which will help with the aircraft frequency. And yeah, we're going to give this a go. See, I'll tune in all of the aircraft frequencies that I know, and we'll use it as a scanner, and we'll try it outside. And I think this will make a good little aircraft scanner. It's really nice to have that second band along with the PMR band. Obviously, yeah, the firmware updates. I've been looking on the internet. I've seen lots of videos. Andy Kirby, Jez, Delboy, Dave, M0OGY. Yeah, some of these firmware, yeah, some are good, some I don't think are good. I mean, they're very fancy. You can get a spectrum scope on the screen and all the rest of it. The basic one that interests me, though, is trying to get this to receive on 27 megs on CB radio. I just don't think it's a viable transmitting radio. I've explained that. I just think it'll put out too much spurious RF. I'm not interested in transmitting, but I will in the future try and update the firmware, and we'll see if we can get it receiving some CB. And yeah, it would be a great little CB receiver, an airband receiver, and a PMR radio. All of that for about 35 quid. Well, you can't really moan, can you? Okay, going to bring this one to a close. I do appreciate it sending up a long video like they do these days. So if you've stuck with the video, cheers. Thank you very much for your view time. I don't get that many views. I do really appreciate it. There's the thumbs up from me. If you've got a second, just hit me a thumbs up down below before you go. If you want to drop a comment on this radio, I'm more than happy to try and answer your questions. If it's very technical, you'll probably go over my head. I'm not the most technical guy, as you know. But yeah, any questions, I'll try and answer that for you. But as for now, as always, look out for those other videos coming up. But yeah, cheers. Thank you for tuning in and watching my videos on Fred in the Shed. There we go. Thumbs up for Fred in the Shed. Please, please, please stay safe. Look after each other. Take care. Catch you on the next one, guys.
Oh,